delegating power to the exec committee. So I think like that's another topic, removal process. And then another concern that's come up is expanding the executive committee to not just the three of y'all, but should the appointed five sit on that? Is that a conversation that needs to be had? I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, but
Expanding into what?
to be the three execs plus the appointed, so that there's precinct representation on the executive committee.
I, as a member of the original five, I'd really like to see us get away from, like, I feel like we were just a little seed to grow the rest of this. So as people like term out and rotate folks, like it just won't matter anymore. Like Commissioners Court had their one window of opportunity to appoint people. Their staff are invited. I don't know what it means if we had like all precinct staff here. Would that be kosher with county procedures or not? But I would like to see us get away from like these original five people, because like these original five people picked the rest of us. Those people elected the three of us. So I feel like we've done all the due diligence.
Right, and that goes along with the line of conversations we were just having. I mean, this is no longer the original five. Now this task force is, you know, whatever it was intended to be. And so until we, you know, when we need to mark a point where, yeah, that the original five, you know, that decision-making piece gives way to the task force as it is now, or as we expect it to be going forward.
Can I ask clarification? So I just wanted to look at the bylaws, and I think there is a bit of a gray area. Like I'm not 100% sure. Like it says the Commissioner's Court appoints one task force member each, right? And then there's like a specific date for when that appointment is made. So because there's a date, it does make it feel like, oh, this was a one-time thing. But then it's kind of unclear because later down it does say that the selection committee shall fill all the appointments and interim vacancies. So I think maybe it's a question we can like ask the county attorney, just like how do you read this? Does it mean that moving forward, like when your vacancy is, for example, needs to be filled, Iris, like does the judge still appoint that, or is it now go back to something else? I think it's yeah, it's a little unclear. Yeah. But it does seem, I think I saw this in somebody's feedback too, that we should create a selections committee.
It was like a governance committee specifically, like it wasn't just the selection committee, but like the selection committee, it was selecting people was part of their roles as like governance or operations or something, which sounds like the exec committee, if I'm being honest. But and then maybe they provided some more thought on that. I haven't looked at this in a couple of days.
Yeah, governance and nominations committee.
Yeah.
So,
What page is that on, Shay?
3.
Page 3.
In the second area, or second group of bullets.
Yeah, and I know people were also asking the question, like, how do we engage beyond 17 humans? So I wonder, like, what other expertise is needed? I wonder if there's like a selections and recruitment or something, like a committee that just activates when we need to fill a vacancy or when we need to bring outside expertise into the work.
As it sits right now, the selection committee is just the 5 and the 3 of y'all. And so the only like possible feedback is that too exclusionary? That means that only half the task force was invited to even participate, not even half on this committee.
Okay, so procedures could be set up that it acts, as she said, you know, if something triggers it, it's an ad hoc committee. A lot of organizations have what they call nominating committees or whatever, and nominations can come from the task force, go through the committee,
Okay.
and then they're scanned,
Like
looked
vetted.
at, vetted, yeah, all of that at the committee level. But, that's what I think it could function as, which does not eliminate the rest of the task force. So I don't know what you think about it.
I mean, this kind of touches on a bigger issue, which I think should also go into the policies and procedures document or whatever we're calling this thing. Which is like, what are expectations of being on the task force? Because the committees are rocking and rolling. And some of the email thread in response to like Ken's comments to court yesterday, the decision about the response to the IRT timeline extension, just the things that have come up that we've had to deal with as a task force. There is some repeating or like missing of information because people were not, the people who were have an opinion, which is great, were not at the committee meeting. And we're kind of seeing like the same usual suspects. This is what happens in coalition, collective work, right? Like the same usual suspects are showing up. So like for, the coalition that I lead, we have an expectation that each member comes to the general meetings, but is also like they pick a committee to serve on. And so I wonder if that is part of just like the expectations of service, so that then we have like robust committees that have good participation, but then people aren't missing information and they can respond to something versus like Holloway having to like consistently repeat something or fill someone in. So if we did that, then we could also open up. Again, I see this elections committee as like, you're not meeting on a regular basis, you're meeting when you need to. So we could open it up to other people who feel strongly that they want to participate.
And I think it was in some of the suggested feedback was everybody sits on a committee, at least one. Because we are seeing the same, like 2 or 3 people sitting on all of the committees. And then there are people who just are unsure how to engage. I don't think that it's a like not wanting to engage, but not knowing all of the details. Is a barrier.
I want more information on trying to follow what to expect and there's some sort of overview factor and our expectation that this will manage to get committee equal time and effort. And it's sort of, the process for these things will be lumpy, right? Depending on what you're working on at the time, I would say selection process, selection can get really quickly at times, and then they may be expanded. So it's kind of an interesting, I don't know if we've ever been sure. Commitment across all committees, but giving people more about what to expect, I guess.
Well, now we kind of know what the committees are.
That too.
It's an easier like commercial. I was looking, do we have like a flow, we have like a graphic representation of the committees, like on a chart or something, like a diagram or something? I'm
We
thinking-
can make one.
I'm thinking about that for what we're just talking about now, but also for promoting it to outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can do that.
Is there a copy?
I can.
What are you looking for?
The bylaws that
I
we
have
have.
it here.
Oh, no, I just thought we had thought we might have had the later paper version printed out. Yeah, I can go look them up.
Very tiny ones this time. I'm sure.
And yeah, they need to be, you can look at it. I've just printed 4. But the printer takes like 3 minutes. to type. Okay, so just to recap, in this policy or this procedures, like companion document, we want to include what the executive committee can and can't do, to what extent we know, and then, talk about it obviously. And then the, iron out the selection process, a removal process, who sits on the exec committee, an emergent process, and then even within just that selection process, make sure that we nail down what that looks like. And I think from the selection committee today, we'll have more feedback from the selection committee on what that process should look like. Did I miss anything? Are there other topics we want to include?
Everything I've written down so far. Okay. I do have one item, so.
Perfect. Okay, so moving on to item number.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So, remind me again when we're getting another draft of the work plan, so we can type this into that timeline.
Thursday.
Thursday, okay.
Um,
That's probably too soon for you guys to get this. When do you think it could?
Tomorrow, Thursday, or next Thursday?
Tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, Thursday, next Thursday,
Yeah.
the 8th.
The 8th.
Um,
Right.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking tomorrow. I was like,
Me too.
no.
Yeah, no. Thursday, the 8th.
Just trying to see when we can get a
That's what
draft
you
of
told me.
policies and procedures so that they can like come to the task force on the July 20th meeting with the work plan.
So before we, I guess, just so that we are all on the same page, can we skip to 6 so that we can talk about, because that'll be hard to talk about deadlines without that information.
Actually, up here, let's do that first. But then I saw you. Yeah, so I think maybe, no, I think everybody got the email, right? So has been the unfortunate issue that the appropriate county departments did not submit a purchase order to go along with when the contract was approved. And all contracts by the county, when you start them, have to have a purchase order, and that essentially like just bets that there's a county budget that's attached to this contract. And because we didn't have that right now, none of the invoices that have been submitted have been able to be processed. And that's kind of what flared up the situation. We were like, let's figure this out. And in that figuring out, we realized that's what happened. And so we're working with the county attorney's office on our end to make sure that we can get Holloway folks paid for the work that they've been doing. But we have to essentially bring an item to the court on July 20th to be able to do that. And so that means that there's like a time period that has to be really bucketed for the time that they're, getting paid. And so we got advice that can be up till July 9th. So that's March till July 9th work that they've done. And then because we submit that and then it gets approved at court on July 20th, that's kind of this like in between period that like there's no purchase order issues, so they can't do work. And then we're stopped at like, this is the time that we can, settle on the payment that for work you did without a purchase order. So I'm calling it this no-fly zone between July 9th and July 20th, where Holloway essentially just needs to lay low. And I'll be back from vacation, so like my office will be available to support some things, but we can't support something as big as the task force meeting or the committee meeting. So I think we're ahead enough of the schedule that like it's not tomorrow, so I think we can plan a little bit ahead. And so we're going to push back the second meeting till like the second or the week of July. That's like the last week of July.
It's the 27th.
Yes. And then we also have to update the subcontractors list, plus this issue with the financing. So we've had to push back the equity training as well. So that's the not so great news, but the good news is like the work will continue. We will make sure Holloway gets paid and continues to be paid to support this work. And yeah, we're just kind of ironing out some of the lessons that we're learning about how to make sure that it gets done well.
So no fly zone needs no meetings, but like we also can't like email anybody or.
Like, y'all can do it, we can do it already.
We just talk to each other. We just can't talk to
Absolutely,
you.
we can respond, obviously, we can resources, so of course, if the idea of hosting a public meeting or a publicly broadcasted committee meetings, that during that no-fly zone, just obviously it's not probably best practice. And so it's a very, it just is what it is, but it'll be July 9th, July 20th, just understood it right now. And the reason to push the meeting from the last week of July, because we have to meet the deadlines in order to get this.
So originally it was suggested that we do it on the 22nd, the meeting number 2, But there is an internal deadline with the county, I don't know if it's internal, but there's a deadline where all of the meeting information has to go to the county attorney's office 7 days in advance, which would give us 2 days to prepare the agenda and, get all the things together. So we would like to do it on the 29th, which gives us a little bit more time. And then that takes the heavy lifting off of y'all to plan a whole meeting without facilitator support.
And if not, that we want for y'all to lead more of the next meeting if it is early. So obviously we'll be right there with you, planning the meeting step by step. That's the intention anyway, to be there. So.
I do want to clarify, can committees still meet without Holloway? Like, because, the task force can still do work. I know that we can't do public, that's the only thing. That's the only thing about live streaming the meetings.
Can that be done without y'all or?
I'm sure.
We can probably connect you with somebody from Universal Services, which is like Harris County IT, and that's how we got all of the information, and they just showed us how to do it. And even yesterday, we were like, we don't understand, can you help us? And they took care of it. We sent them the agenda and the Zoom link. So as long as somebody on the task force has a Zoom that can be used, then they can still have it. Yeah, we can live stream.
That's a good idea.
I think if we also are able to like record it and then just post it afterwards, I think, the bylaws say like, to the extent possible, and this might be a situation where we can say like, it's unusual, we have to do it this way, just to be able to keep the work going, but we will post it. So yeah, I think that would be fine, and then just like making sure that somebody's there to take minutes, and feel free to like ping myself if you want me to do that, and I can also work with my team to get somebody to support if I can't make it or.
What would be helpful for y'all, and this may be too big of an ask, but like, what would be helpful for y'all to come from us to prepare you for that like 2-week-ish window without facilitation support?
So I'm gonna be on vacation for 2 weeks, like pretty much exactly.
That's
It's unfortunate news, but like selfishly, I'm thrilled. Because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to work on the 15th. So I won't be available to any humans during those 2 weeks.
I'll be out for 1 week. Brilliant strategy.
Yeah, so maybe we should also talk about our availability. So Vanessa and I are both out next week, and then no fly zone starts on the 9th. When do you leave, Iris?
The 11th.
And
I'll be
then
out the week of the 12th and the week of the 19th.
okay, 7/11 through. I like
There's
to through
7/23.
7/20.
Or 3.
7/23, yeah. We won't bug you on the weekend either. And Yasmin, when are you off?
The week of the 19th.
Ken, are you going on vacation?
Apparently.
You should.
You're right, I really should, shouldn't I?
Right? This is your opportunity.
Don't plan for the week of the 26th.
Right.
Yeah, everyone be back on the 23rd. Oh, I'm looking at August.
Yeah, I've got July open.
So we're all in a no-fly zone. Sounds
It's a
good to
tough
me.
time.
I think the only thing that should be on our radar, and we really don't have any information about that yet, is anything that would need to go to court that task force would lend their support to, or opposition to, or make any kind of official thing about. But we really won't know until like a week before, right? Until all this stuff is due.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an item, for example, like related to the IRT departments, like maybe public health is an item you might be interested in, but so to date, that hasn't come up. If the one item I am aware of is that the IRT is still interested in moving forward with the extension of the timeline. So the court is on July 20th, if I'm getting that right. So they have to like submit those documents a week before. So that's like around July 13th-ish. And I think as it stands right now, it's still an issue of IRT putting it on the agenda and task force just submitting or the letter that guys voted on saying that you would support an extension of the timeline.
And that July 20th is the only court date in July.
In
right?
July, yeah, yeah, court has a similar no-fly zone for the next few weeks, yeah.
The universe telling us.
So slow down.
Thank you. And then to clarify, because I think that's something that we could churn out preemptively before the no-fly zone, is it a letter or is it just remarks? Because I thought we had voted on remarks, but I could be wrong.
Oh, did we? I would rely on the good to remind me of it.
I thought it was a letter.
I thought it was too.
Just kidding.
Okay, but I don't want to at all,
But we
but
can
we
bring
could
that,
go ahead and draft it and get it out now.
put that under commitment, so I don't forget.
Yeah, and that way y'all have plenty of time to review it, read into it.
And then as an aside, one thing that we do in like at Holloway is like a PTO, like here are all the things that you can find all the things while I'm out. Would that be helpful for y'all? Like, here's all of the contact information. Here's all of the committee people here. That's an emphatic yes from Kim. So I'll make a
We put it
transition.
up on Teams, we leave it there.
Yeah.
It needs to be updated.
Just have an
Yeah.
evergreen.
Because that's too, I was saying, that you're gonna apply them too, it's good thing, bad thing, right? Like, if there's a silver lining in that y'all are gelling as the executive committee and the committees are rolling, so it might give some people some unexpected.
Sort of empowerment to just keep rolling it, a little bit of autonomy.
Idea, but, if we give you all the tools, then you can always call us, so I can't find this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a perfect, it's a perfect time to explore all of those kinds of things that we might think about, that we need to go forward in case this kind of, any other kind of no-fly zone exists. I mean, we have to be able to keep moving. So it's a good thing.
Awesome. So with that in mind,
I will check with you.
with that in mind, when would y'all like this policy and procedures buddy document? Because I don't think we can get that out by next Thursday.
No. This is something we're gonna be working on. So, I mean, we'll be talking more about it, but this is a document, just like any policies and procedures document. It's a living document, number one. So now we're just talking about identifying, I guess, maybe the structure of how it's laid out, and then flagging documents / information that we think, yeah, this needs to be in here. And so one of the comments that I made to Iris was that just as a layout type thing, that I thought the work plan kind of forms a functional outline. And so from there, the policies and procedures part just becomes much more detailed,
Sure.
if you understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
So we worked for years on policies and procedures for this company, right? But the nice thing about it is it's not something that we revisit all the time. Oh, that-
Yeah.
This change that doesn't work, and then you don't need that, the work plan stands alone and you have the flexibility and the attachment that is your policies and procedures to get into the nitty gritty details, but also fluctuate as numbers change over time or expectations change. Here. That makes sense. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
What do you think? Yeah.
We can start something online.
Was it the greatest idea you ever heard?
I just think, I mean, as this task force, we do need that flexibility if we are creating a blueprint. Like, we can't just be like, this is gonna be how it's gonna be done, like, years to come. It's like, we have to make it to where people can come in and like expand it, and grow from it, rather than like being so rigid as per usual, like, working in the city kind of is. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree with it being a living, breathing document. I do think we should prioritize like articulating
what we see as the decision-making power of the executive committee versus the others at the next July meeting. And then kind of like getting to consensus around like, okay, everyone is comfortable that when something urgent like this comes up, these three people can make that decision. Or when, like, I think we should have a few maybe examples.
Yes.
But I do, and even if it's not, you know, fully mapped out, but for us to be able to have that on the agenda and us to come prepared with something to share and get some feedback on, and hopefully at the end of the meeting, like have an agreement. So we're clear on what people feel comfortable with us doing or not doing.
Right. And that way they don't feel excluded because we've all agreed to what we're gonna do. And yeah. I agree.
Good.
So you gotta make all your vacation plans public.
I think you just did.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is communication with the full CFRTF, which came from y'all. What specifically were y'all thinking on this item?
Was there an issue with it or?
I think it was related to the same decision making
Okay.
thing, right? Like when do we, okay? When do we, trying to just think of what has come up, like when do we notify? This has come up like in committee level stuff, like when does the committee have the autonomy to just like run with it? Because the task force has already voted on or agreed to whatever, they've already green lighted it. And so the communication is just like an FYI, as your due diligence versus like the back and forth around Ken's comments that people had like specific edits and then we had to like go back. So I think that's all bundled into what we were just talking about before of like having a vision or like pitching an idea to the task force at the July meeting of here's how we think it would work best.
I think a lot in line with that also is figuring out what is communication from y'all versus communication for us. I know that we kind of touched about, I think only the four of us talked about it last week, but we kind of touched on it last week with that concern that came in about pronouns. But I think also clearly, but like I get emails all the time, I'm like, okay, Vanessa, who does this go to? Do I send it out? Do I not send it out? So figuring out what specifically we need to do, you know what I mean? Because I think there is like that clear, like this comes from facilitation versus this comes from exec.
Yeah, and I think, oh, go ahead.
I'm
Sorry.
I'm like wondering if, because we have the bylaws, I'm wondering if we have like some type of training where like we do talk about, because you mentioned that, Iris, about having somebody come in, but I wonder if that could be like a requirement or just a training that we have to where we're all in agreement rather than just like, you know, these are the bylaws, you respect pronouns, but you know, we're gonna have older people that don't understand that. And the reason I volunteer was because, you know, I am non-binary. So I just, you know, for them to kind of understand, they have somebody on the task force that, you know, we do have to, I guess, gender, right? You know, because I get misgendered all the time. So that's why I was like, you know, I could talk and maybe they could have some sense of like, oh, you know, like there's somebody in the task force that, you know, because it just seemed, I think a lot of his comments recently have been kind of like, I'm not sure if we're all on the same page of what like equity means, because equity, like respecting LGBTQ plus people is in that equity, like, you know, looking at people and respecting them. So I'm not sure if we kind of missed the mark in that equity training, or if we have to add an additional training that kind of explores or expands on it, on just respecting people in like different walks of life, you know, especially if we're going to be working with a lot of white men. I don't know. Yeah, because I don't think they really see their privilege in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of touches on like the removal process a little bit. Because that has also been posed as a question, right? Like there are people here around the table that don't actually agree or believe or understand what equity is. And what do we do with that if we are an equity task force? Yeah, equity-based task force. But I also like want to hold the space of being able to have diverse opinions around the table, but they have to be anchored in like a common thing. So I don't know how, like what the process is for us then, especially because this person we're talking about was appointed by Commissioners Court and is one of the original 5. So that goes into all the questions and but I think that's part of what the selections committee needs to talk through and figure out the process for, because essentially Jimmy like self-removed, he removed himself because of that, but there might be, now or in the future, other cases where we would see this is not working and we need a process to remove someone.
Well, and also, I mean, I think along with what you said, Yasmin, this is also as we go, constant training and retraining. I mean, as we go, because people will be dropping off, people will be joining. Some people don't get it the first time, but the more training we get and the more discussion we have, even if you don't get complete buy-in, you get respect. So, you get none of that if you just stop and they say, well, I don't get it. And then we do nothing else. The constant training and then retraining and conversation, because we're all, with the exception of the 5, I mean, the 5 know each other. All the rest of us.
So I think one actionable thing we can do is create, because originally we had talked to Tane about including that on the 10th, but since the 10th is in that no-fly zone, that's going to need to be rescheduled. So I think an actual item that we could do is engaging somebody from U of H, like you suggested, and having them do like 10 to 20 minutes or maybe longer. Y'all get to pick the agenda at the beginning. Well, I was going to say at the beginning of the next meeting, because I think, and again, it is not my role to put my opinion, but I think it is a misstep to continue to have meetings and not directly address it, because that's it's one of our norms that is talked about at every single meeting.
And he also mentioned that it wasn't just him who felt that way. So I'm wondering who else, is kind of, we're not on the same page, it seems, even though nobody's saying it, because we're not having that conversation. We don't have that space for that conversation. But yeah, I think it would be, like you said, we have to touch on it immediately before we move on.
I think this would be, to Yasmin's point, really is a sort of a reset in terms of grounding and respect. And it's when we work on these large scale controversial projects, it's not that everyone has to like it for both of it, but a real consideration of chance, right? It's like human level, if you get a common understanding, or maybe it's not. But what you said was so well, I think that we can start, at least we do, I agree, I don't need to vote, but I like the idea of putting on the agenda for July and starting there.
Yeah, so do I. I also, like I said this in the email, but there's like an expiration date to calling someone in or to providing the training. And like, I, again, want to have a process of is it is in our norms, is it, 3 counts, you're out, or there's work that we can do, and then there's work that individual people need to do and own. And if that doesn't happen, then we're only going to get so far. So I also want to set a boundary for the really good ideas that are being lifted up, because there's an expiration date to you've been to 3 trainings, you've talked about it 4 times, you're still,
Right, because it feels like he's in the defensive, or at least that's what I'm picking it up, because even the comment about the poor community is getting a lot of money, and it seems like he promotes the West Side a lot more. But whenever we're talking about equity, it's not so much we're looking at specific, we're looking at both, and we're looking at these systematic, like racist systems that are in place, and it just seems like it goes over his head. At least that's how I feel. So, yeah, and if we're moving about doing work about equity and we don't have people that know or understand what equity means, we're gonna be in this constant of, having to retrain him or having to have these trainings constantly to where it just takes away from the little time that we do have to have conversations to move forward and see what we can do as a task force.
How much, and this can be tabled for later, but thinking about how much time we want to take off the meeting agenda for this, that I can coordinate with the trainer from UH. We technically told everybody 2 hours, but the last meeting, Kim said an hour and a half. And it sounded like at the last meeting, we also committed to not doing a 3.5-hour meeting.
Yes, we most definitely.
Not again.
I was awake for this.
You're already agreeing.
No.
But y'all can get back to me on how long you think that thing should be. That doesn't need to happen here. I want to be mindful of time because we have 13 minutes until 10. The next thing on the item. Oh, yeah.
I do want to circle back to, I think what Iris was getting at, what's been brought up, been brought up to my attention as well, that we do need a process, call it like an anonymous complaint or a grievance process that leads to a potential recommendation or a vote from the task force for removal of somebody. Now, again, I think it's unclear to me right now, the bylaws don't specify it, so we want to still ask some questions, but I think it would be helpful if you guys as a committee or working with the task force put together something that then we can, take to the county attorney's office and be like, is this good for you? Will this work legally? Can we implement it into the bylaws? So no rush on my end, but if you guys have a rush, then I can work on your schedule to get feedback on that from the appropriate.
Would it be too much? I'm not sure. Do we have to have that conversation with the whole task force? To make that type of document, or like where we go and like what would be, like you mentioned, Iris, like strikes, like do we go over that with the whole task force of what we would all agree on, like, hey, this person is not doing so, or is it just a complaint and like so many complaints that we're going to agree on, like, oh, we must talk about so and so person to get removed? I'm not sure if that would come like a conversation after the LGBTQ training, or if it's too much time that will be taken away from us, or like, trying to figure out.
I don't know if this timeline is realistic, but in an ideal world, I could see the exec team with facilitation support or the facilitation team with exec input, whatever, comes up with this process and then has it voted on and approved by the greater task force at the next meeting. And then it's implemented after July 29th.
I agree. I think that's our role, is to help talk through those things and synthesize them, and then bring something back that's actionable to the bigger group. To have 17 people talking through. So I think that's one of our biggest functions, is with the support of this team, to do that kind of thing. Come back with here's what we have talked through. We need your feedback here. But when would we do that? Now we have to
Yeah, well, I think in the meantime, it does sound like we're gonna do, like you're saying, some internal things to address it, and I don't, the next meeting after July is September, so think about, is this pressing enough that you think it has to be done July, or if you think you can wait until September with the goal that we will have some equity trainings in between, and do the work necessary internally to then be better positioned to say, hey, the internal work is not enough. This is actually.
Maybe give it a little more time to sink in, because we'll have more trainings between now and then.
Yeah, I mean,
And it would be helpful
Time.
to see what other task force process, if we can get some examples of other bodies, how they do it, that would help for our discussion.
yeah. Well, I mean, and And a lot of organizations, especially on the corporate side, and I'm pretty sure on the governmental side as well. You know, this kind of training is iterative, and then it's repetitive, and you have to, whether you get, you know, some stuff is, you know, it's like rules of conduct. You read that, you need to sign off on it, agree to it, whatever the case may be. But, you know, like a year from now, it's the same thing. Unless changes have been made. These are the rules. This is what we agreed to. Sign it. You know, so that happens in lots of organizations. I'm just throwing that out there as an example. You know, if somebody constantly does not abide by, you know, what we've been trained on and what we as members have agreed to, then yeah, I mean, they're creating their own nomination to be removed before that. If you understand what I'm saying. And a lot of this, so a lot of what we hear in some of these meetings, people come from various backgrounds, which is what we want. And the other piece of it is there is some political rhetoric included in what some of these people say all the time. One of those things you mentioned, and this is a piece of rhetoric that exists and has existed for a long period of time. But, you know, we've had to talk about it for years in HISD dealing with schools. Particularly, I graduated from Cashmere High School. So for like 9 years, Cashmere was on improvement required status, threatened to be closed many times. Actually, it was threatened to be closed before it ever got on that list. But the main argument that you had from other people in HISD and trustees other than the District 2 trustees, the main argument was, well, look how much money we're spending in Cashmere. You know, they're talking about all of programs that were created within HISD to say, you know, these schools, because they need extra help, need to get this extra money. Well, people use that to say on a per student basis, look how much money they get per student. Yeah, but they're still on our status, you know, so that's the part that's missed. And oh, by the way, go back 20 years, go back 30 years, go back 40 years and see how much money was not spent on this side of town in these schools, period. And so some of that is the kind of rhetoric you would hear when you want to hear, I think somebody asked in the last meeting, well, how much is enough? Well, wait a minute, we're not talking amount here like you can pay us off and we'll be happy. That's not it, you know, but if we're looking at a total solution through an equity lens, then that's an approach that has not been used in the past. And all this piecemeal stuff, yeah, we need to spend a bunch of money over here because this is where a lot of flooding occurred last time. Yeah, it looks good when you want to say we spent this much over there, but it still floods in a rain like we just had over the last week. So just throwing that in. Just my soapbox.
I think it'd be really helpful for Tane, for y'all to prompt Tane to like come up or to share examples from his own work with municipalities about how they have confronted that historical context. I think that's the big part that's missing in some of what I'm hearing people say or share. It's not just about the money, as Ken is saying, that's a big part of the piece of the puzzle, but it's not just about that. And I think Tanya can help kind of like unpack that a little bit. We started to do that last time, but it's really helpful. Like the city of Austin confronted that and like explicitly put up paper, like, here is how we understand how we got here.
Really quickly, before we go to the next item, it's 4 till 10, and I know you have your camp day.
I was gonna ask, could I like, I'm not sure if I can like pop in my laptop.
Sit at my desk over there. It's second from the end.
By the cups?
On the second row, do you see the man? Yes, thank you, Rosie. At my last job, we weren't allowed to point, or my previous job, and so every time I point, I'm like, broke a social norm.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But Rose, can you take your, or take them downstairs?
Okay.
You're doing something quick and coming back. or-
Yeah, doors are here. It's like 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
We may be here, we may not. We'll find out.
Okay, yeah.
It's being recorded.
If they run out of snacks, we'll be gone.
No.
Thank you.
So one more thing on the communication thing, I think also in there, we need to consider from the committees, from the subcommittees, how they communicate to the entire task force, yeah.
Yeah, how do they report out?
Yeah, how do they report out? And does that just come as a, a regular report out during the regular meetings? Do they write up some kind of, written report and they submit it up through y'all, which comes to us?
So thank you for bringing that up. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. And by we, I mean Greg, who, I don't know if y'all, he was the man who came in earlier. in the
Our
first-
creative
yeah,
director.
He's great. Came up with an agenda request form. And so we actually wanted to get approved by y'all. We would send it out to task force, IRT, county departments. Everybody has to fill it out. Let me share my screen so everyone can see it. And it should pop, just kidding, it won't pop up there. But basically it like asks, okay. Basically, it asks for like the agenda title. Is it associated with a committee? Is it associated with a department? How long do you think this will take to talk about at a meeting? What priority do you perceive this? And then give me a description about what you want to talk about. And then y'all would approve, they'd send it to us, and then y'all would approve whether or not it's going to be talked about on the agenda.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I think your question, that sounds good with me, Mariah. I think your question feeds into number 4 as well for me, of like, how
Oh,
does the executive committee cover those? And then I think an expectation of the chair of the subcommittee is to meet with us or to provide us a report, or maybe they like get invited to every other executive committee meeting. I don't know. We got to figure out what we want, but we should leverage the chair
Right,
role.
yes.
I think one thing that I have seen as a challenge is it's the same people signing up for subcommittees.
Yeah.
And so the only people technically on the finance committee are Bob and Michael, plus the 3 of y'all. And nobody volunteered to be finance committee chair. And
Michael is the chair of
yeah.
And so it's also hard to set an expectation then that all committees must report out, which
I think they should.
they should.
They should, yeah.
Otherwise, their work is
Right.
shared and they're in a silo.
And I almost think that needs to almost be a standing report on the agenda,
Okay.
a summary
A committee
report.
report out.
Right, a summary
Mhm.
report. I'm saying summary in quotations because if you got something really big, then yeah, that needs to be an agenda item on its own. But if I'm a committee chair and we have our regular meetings and we get down to finance committee and it's just a blurb. Finance committee discussed XYZ, and we have these questions, XYZ. done.
Yeah.
You know, for the whole task force. If there is some big thing, you know, that they had some kind of big report that they were doing research on, you know, they need to come back and present some data, and a slideshow and all of that. Yeah, that's an agenda item on its own, and they do need to, or we need to ask them to get on your,
To fill out my form.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think the standing agenda item, for just report outs makes sense. Maybe the form is just if there's like an actionable item that needs a decision,
Yep,
then they fill out the form for that.
I kind of like having them fill out the form, even if it is standing, that way we can have it in writing what they say, and that can just be on the agenda when we send it out, like, this is a finance committee update. And in their own words, and then maybe, you know, Michael speaks a little bit more about it, but there's at least like a summary that's on the agenda for people to reference before the meeting.
okay.
So it's like a supporting agenda document.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm saying that because you all also are sharing out notes from those meetings,
Mhm.
right? So like that should continue, I think. Right?
And
Yeah.
recordings.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're
Right.
recording more too.
Yeah, so there, yes, there was a lot, yeah.
And the notes will flag like this, the action item is to take this to vote at the next meeting or whatever.
And those can always be, you know, referred to as supplements.
So then looking at number 4, which is still kind of what we're talking about, do y'all want to divvy up the committees between y'all? Because I know I sit on most of the meetings, if not all of them, and it's a lot, and I get
Yeah.
paid, and y'all are volunteers. So how can we make it easier for y'all?
Tell us this from the beginning.
I'm ready for my assignment here. Where do you want me? Was I completely joking around?
Oh, no, you know, we all agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely agree with that. And I mean, I don't know, how many committees are there? 3?
Three and then now selection.
Finance, equity, selection, exec, and then eventually there will be a community engagement one that has not been approved yet.
And a selection, a standing committee, or is that?
Or is that an
ad
ad hoc committee?
That one doesn't have as much, that one has like probably the least responsibilities, except for right now, where they will probably have the most responsibilities.
I'll be assigned to that one.
That doesn't count as one of the 3.
Technically, Iris is assigned to that one also.
We're all there already.
Iris, you're on the fly.
Tim would like that to start right now. This is his vacation.
No, but, yeah, I mean, you got one you want to be assigned to, take your pick. I don't mind, whatever.
Wait, finance, equity, and what's the other one?
Eventually, community engagement, but right now it's just finance and equity.
There was also a proposal for like an overall framework one on the work plan. Is that the one that works closely with the IRT? It works closely with the IRT and provides like, I think, answers to these questions around like, how do we define equity, how do we define resilience?
And what is that one again?
It's, the title is not a great title, isn't it? It's the overall like approach and framework committee. So it's, the idea is that committee will work with the IRT on like looking at the work plan for the flood resilience plan and thinking about like, is this what we mean when we say resilience? Like, are we on the same page when we say equitable flood resilience? And also proposing some best practices. So I think this is where like folks who want to do nature-based solutions that falls under there. So they could provide like advice on what are the nature-based solutions that should be a part of this plan, for example. In terms of resilience, like just even defining resilience, like what that means and what the IRT needs to be looking at when they're talking about resilience would be kind of folded into that. It hasn't been approved though, so.
And then and y'all will see it when y'all look at the feedback, there was a lot of suggested committees, like maybe 3 or 4 more suggested committees. And then, I lost my train of thought. Right now, the immediate need is figuring out finance, and equity and metrics.
Mhm.
And finance, we're gonna need to schedule another one because it was supposed to be the third Tuesday of every month, but that's Commissioners Court and in the no-fly zone. We're talking about committees.
Okay.
If I could throw out a suggestion, I think Yasmin gave really, really good input and insight that nobody was even considering in that finance committee. I would love for you to be the exec.
Okay. Yeah. And like I said, economics, but.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would like to, just because, I was a little bit disappointed, just because it seemed like they kind of already had the idea and like only certain options, or like one option. It's like we have A, B, and C, but A and B won't work, so we have C. And whenever I talked about that, well, getting money and funds from police, it was like, oh, it's kind of brushed off. So, yeah, I would like to sit on that and have a little bit of input.
You didn't choose?
Well, the one that sounds the ickiest to me is the overall approach, and I feel like that's what I should.
I was also thinking that.
You're just running towards it, running toward the fire.
But like, what's your first choice?
Community engagement.
Oh, okay.
That would be my first choice.
I mean, I'll also say that I would, even if I'm assigned to a different one, I would probably go to all the equity meetings because I'm
Yeah.
really interested in that.
I figured you would like that. Yeah.
So Iris will put you down right now for overall, which hasn't been established yet, so no responsibilities yet.
And it hasn't been voted on yet.
Yeah, and equity and metrics. And then we'll put Ken down for community engagement, which also hasn't been established yet, so no responsibilities yet. And then Yasmin for finance, which meeting date is pending, and we desperately need a chair. I don't know, desperately is an overstatement. And then everybody's on the selection committee, which is all the immediate needs right now.
Right. So when you say community engagement, nobody signed up for it? or-
So
There's
the
been no
committees
votes.
have to vote on that. The task force has to vote on committees to be formed.
Oh, okay.
But
So we
I,
didn't vote on it.
we
Not
didn't vote on that one, but I think we should vote on it at the next meeting because the community engagement plan is specifically tied to an IRT deliverable.
Right.
Yes.
And to the hallway.
And a Holly
Yes.
deliverable.
Yeah, and that has to be one of our things too.
Mhm.
We talked about that. Community engagement has to be one of our things, period.
And I remember early on, there were some conversations about what the expectation is of the task force with regard to community engagement. I think there was some misalignment or misunderstanding as to what that needed to look like. So I think this is where we can hash it out and put together a really solid plan.
Awesome.
I think so.
And then just for the record, future committees will divvy those up as they are created. But this is where we are for now. Perfect. Ken, you reached out to talk about bylaws.
Right, and my whole point about that is that, the original 5, some of them like Michael was
Michael's
not
not a
original
5.
5. Okay, bad example.
Non-example.
But he knows all about the bylaws. He cites them all the time. Whether he's right or not, I can't really be sure until I go check because I'm just not that, I've read through them. They're not overly cumbersome, but I think just like a lot of other stuff we talked about we just need to kind of go through them, refer to them, and understand what applies to what. And if something jumps out that we think needs to be flagged for amendment or whatever, brought up for discussion, in front of the task force or whatever, then the only way I think that we can ever do that is that we have to kind of almost on a semi-regular basis be going through these.
Check them.
Yes,
So.
to make sure that.
Parliamentary procedure
Yeah.
type of thing.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So, if we don't we don't do that. I mean, from my standpoint, Iris probably knows a lot about. I don't know that much about them, and it doesn't automatically pop in my head. Oh, I wonder what the bylaw says about this. So, you know, I think it would help if we review them to see what needs to be changed, if there's anything needs to be changed. We discuss stuff, or we in line with what's written here, and what should change. Should this change, or should we change what we're proposing?
And all bylaws changes need to be approved by court.
I was going
Yeah.
to pull a Michael and refer you back to the bylaws about amendments. So if you turn to page 11 of your bylaws packet, item number 60 under article 10, actually, I don't know my Roman numerals, I think that's 10.
Yep.
Um, Amendments all all amendments have to be approved by the task force. And then before they are approved by the task force, they have to go to commissioner's court. I think because I think, yes, we should all know the bylaws. But I think if we're gonna make changes to them, we should have like a very comprehensive list.
Agreed.
And maybe that's like we set a goal for, okay, we're gonna take these to commissioner's court by the end of this year. That way, we've done 3 meetings, we're halfway through, and we've figured out what works, what doesn't work. Instead of piecemealing the changes to commissioner's court.
Yes, no, agree.
I just want to, because I know the deadlines and timelines is something that was brought up, so I'm gonna put a timeline for us. Maybe we get this approved by the November.
List of wholesale changes.
Yeah, here are all the amendments. We can ask the task force if they have any amendments. Maybe we even have a special meeting where we argue about what changes need to be made. And then by the November task force meeting, we agree, okay, we're gonna take this to the commissioner's court meeting in December. Do y'all meet in December?
There's, I think, one meeting coming up.
Actually, I think I would suggest that's a good timeline, because that way, I mean, granted, it's sort of midterm for people on the task force, but it's still end of a year, a calendar year. So I don't know how y'all feel about that, but.
Yeah, that works. And is that work that you described then the work that the executive committee would do? Or like, there's this idea of the governance committee. Do we want to leave that, or do we want a whole committee to do that work?
To do which work, flag?
Like putting together the package.
Oh,
of,
okay.
Here are all the amendments we want to the bylaws.
So you're saying have it be a work group with the whole task force, but then the compilation of the request would be done by a committee? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I'm just looking at this feedback from some people.
Okay.
Or even if it's this idea that we're gonna put in committee, if you have strong feelings about the bylaws, you should participate in this committee, and y'all will receive requests from task force members about bylaws, and then internally in committee, I'll debate them, vet them, and then come up with a proposal based on the feedback you receive.
Right, and maybe that committee facilitates or helps lead this workshop.
And this sounds like a good committee for you to sit on, Ken, as the exec representative. Okay, awesome. I think then a governance committee would need to be approved at the next governance committee. And I'll make a list of committees that should be approved, but all
And
of
there's the governance, that's also an ad hoc, like only when we need that. I'm just getting worried about like 5 committees.
And 17 people.
Right.
But I think though, and this is later, I suppose, but you know, there's nothing that is holding anyone not on the task force to be on a committee. They just can't be on the task force per se, right?
Right, other non-task force members can sit on
Committees.
on committees.
But I think that's more of a community engagement type of a role. I mean, nobody knows about the task force yet, so.
Right.
It's just, I think that's down the road that people that are not on the 17-member task force can serve on a committee. Technically, but nobody knows that yet. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead.
No, that's a good point. No, I was just saying that's a good point.
Well, I'm wondering if we should combine the governance and the selections committees into one.
That was the recommendation that came from the task force, or from a task force member.
I think it would make sense, since they won't meet frequently, to just like compile them, and then they have some work to do. rather than like having two separate. They go together.
With the deadline. So then after the end of the year, they're kind of done for a while.
Hoping that no one falls off.
So your governance, they would like be maybe activated for the last quarter of the year or something like that. When this stuff is being collected, so that they can prepare it for whichever meeting it is.
So like say vote, compile something for task force vote in November and court approval in December.
I would even maybe align it with your end of the year report, just so you have, you're submitting your end of the year report, part of your report is here's the revisions we think are important to the bylaw. And that's actually not till
March.
So you have some time. I mean, unless it's pressing, unless you're like, no, this has to get done, which of course is also not.
And I think that decision could be made in that committee. Like, and maybe they get to review the bylaws and we're like, the bylaws are okay.
Or this can wait till
They're,
March.
they're not great, but they're okay. And we
Yeah,
can
I
wait.
mean, and there may be, you know, not have any. amendment.
Oh, no, I've already received,
We're not gonna
I've
have
already
any bylaws.
received people's feedback about bylaw changes. Yeah.
No rules.
Ours would be able to talk people out of it. Who knows?
No rules.
Okay, perfect. So we've kind of already talked about the second meeting a little bit, but I think, so with that, do we want to meet again after this no-fly zone? And spend like an hour, probably looks like an hour and a half, y'all, an hour and a half to talk about the second meeting? What, let's see.
Just kind of a regroup meeting.
Yeah, and still in December. Does July? Sorry, all of the things.
You think in the 21st or 8th? Well, the night, if the 29th is the next.
The
meeting.
20th is Commissioner's Court,
And ours is
Uh-huh.
about that week, and so is your conference.
Mhm.
so the 27th. So the best day would be the 20th, I'm not gonna lie. But we can't do the 20th. Because Commissioner's Court, everyone's out of town. The agenda has to go to the county attorney by the 22nd.
For the 22nd.
If, yeah, it has to go 7 days before the meeting.
Is that something that we can put together
We just
next week while you're out? And
No.
then, no,
because we don't know what agenda items will be on the agenda yet.
gotcha, okay. Just trying to get ahead of the no-fly.
Because technically, task force members and any IRT department in the IRT can submit agenda items for review.
10 days.
Well, we've internally told them 10 days, so
Uh-huh.
through the 19th.
Okay.
Can we just do a really quick brainstorm right now? What needs to go on there? We already lifted up a few things, right? Like a standing report out, agenda items from committee.
Yep. And also,
The work plan needs to be voted on and
Mhm.
adopted.
Work plan,
We're doing a training.
training.
Just
How long
respectful.
do we want that training to be?
I don't think it should be that long.
and should we,
Probably, do you remember Arthea's presentation on equity?
Mhm.
That, something like that.
Yeah, because I was thinking, whenever I volunteered, I was thinking like 10 minutes. I don't know, hoping that.
and do you want to leave open, like time for open discussion and questions as well? To check for understanding, maybe?
I would like that, just so we're on the same page and people aren't just like, oh, this training and then like, putting, throwing it away.
Let's
Like,
do-
oh, I still don't believe in it.
20 minutes, 10-minute presentation, 10 minutes discussion, and we can do that at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah,
Because it is part of the norms, really. I mean,
right.
so
work plan, all the committees we discussed, training.
we have to approve the formation of these other committees.
Yeah, that committees.
Okay. Oh, that was like a separate item versus, there's committee report outs. and
Oh,
there's
committee
the-
report.
The vote to approve the other committees.
Reports.
And then I think this decision-making question, right, like us saying, here's how we looked through the feedback that y'all provided, we've talked amongst ourselves, and here are the scenarios under which the executive committee should have authority to make a decision.
Yeah.
And then here are examples of when we need to bring it to a full task force, regardless of if it comes from the executive committee or a subcommittee or anyone else.
I think also the IRT timeline reset, we'll know, it'll be
We'll know.
approved by the 20th, so we'll know whether or not, so may just give an update.
Yeah, we'll have to.
This is what our timeline is now, and that can be on us,
Mhm.
and we can share a graphic.
So you're saying the IRT is taking that agenda item to the July 20th board, and we're providing a written support letter that'll go to everybody. Okay, got it.
IRT.
I mean, that's already an hour and a half. At least.
I was thinking, and I don't know if this is like like, could be a committee situation, but I've been hearing a lot of folks sort of kind of ask for, they want to know like what the state of things look like and look at like that and feel grounded in the facts. And I think we should, and by we, I mean like we, like the county and people who have experienced flooding, right? We have data, like there's been studies that have been done. We have some type of understanding. So I was thinking it could be helpful to try to see if we can maybe put together like a quick presentation on what we know, like what we know from the Greater Houston Partnership report of like what flooding looks like here, and try to have like a workshop then where we, I think it was really powerful what's been going on in the discussion in terms of people are saying this is my experience, my personal experience with flooding. And in a way that we can like map it, like as a task force member, where do you know that it frequently floods when there's a quick rain versus like we flooded during Harvey, and try to just have a moment of grounding our own or the task force's own lived experience with flooding and having it, look at then what do we know is the data is showing us based on the reports that we know. And then lead that to a conversation around what people have been saying is like, what are the reasons why? Some people are saying it's because the city doesn't provide enough cleanup of drainage. Some people are saying it's like we don't have like enough floodplain regulations. Some people are saying we don't have enough funding. And just map out like what are these systems that we're trying to tackle as a task force, and really just get to what is the issue collectively and what are the systems that we're trying to change collectively. And I don't know if that's possible during the meeting, but I think something like that could really help ground folks who've been saying like, I just feel kind of like I'm floating and I don't know what exactly is that I'm supposed to advise on.
Yeah, I like that, especially whenever we go on to like moving on to projects and stuff, we just have like specific targets rather than like being all over the place. I think that will ground us. Kind of math. Yeah. But just be concise about like what we're trying to do, right, moving forward, rather than like because it does seem like that to me at least. Like there's a lot of interest, but we're still like, well, the interests are just up in the air rather than like what are we doing.
Oh, and one thing, yeah, I agree. And
Excuse me.
what you were saying also, that with, with the photographs that Bob, Tracy, I mean, I can identify with that directly because Huey and I have gone out and done some of those exact same photographs and tried to get something done about those problems, of getting water out of communities. So that's very basic stuff right there. I mean, I might disagree with somebody, but if we can agree on, hey, this is not right. And so this is a piece of something that needs to be changed. Hey, we have a common agreement on a point, a start point that needs to be fixed. And then, it's either something that the task force deals with or maybe makes recommendations for somebody else to deal with. But that, yeah, that is a common ground. That I think, most people can identify with.
Yeah, something we did for our forum, that we held, but it was like ask storytellers, like community storytellers to actually, it was on Zoom, so like one person had their phone and they were just like showing us like, and they live in Aldine, so she was saying, you know, like this side of the street is county jurisdiction and this side of the neighborhood is city. And like, here's the same, you know, the same photo that everyone has, like this has not been properly maintained. We have to do this. If people don't do it, here's what happens. We've called this into 311. We've like tried to deal with this and just kind of like spotlighted different like storytellers. And I guess I'm thinking about like a storytelling corner or something as a part of like maybe the introductory activity for each meeting or like a standing agenda item.
I'm also thinking
So that we're rooted in like people and we're also rooted in place and we're also rooted in like, that will help build relationships, I think, with each other. And like what y'all were saying, like we still don't know one another. And I think what we should do though is also connect it to the deliverable, like a deliverable in the work plan. Like here's how this task force is responding, or like here's the place where we are within our structure addressing this concern, and we could just rotate around the county.
And even on down the road, no, I completely agree with, you know, putting it to a more immediate deliverable, but on down the road, start building that storytelling bank as part of the community engagement plan and the online presence,
Yep.
and then getting more voices in as we go and kind of making it this like grassroots, you know, built
Exactly.
thing of momentum.
Yep.
Yeah, and the tours will help in a like longer format to do that, but it's like a little mini virtual tour or something.
Yeah, and also we received an email regarding NAC, so the Northeast Action Collective, and I go to their meetings and interpret for them sometimes. But I think they would be a great source of like people who want to share their stories. And also, I think it would be great to have people who speak other languages and making that also inclusive, because most of these things usually are exclusive because of the language barrier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no lack of, people in Northeast Houston who are willing to share their stories about flood. But yeah, that is, yeah, that's.
They've done a
great.
lot of work.
Ms. Brown, as a matter of fact, met her, right after.
Yeah, they were there.
Margaret.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's like yesterday, but yeah.
Dark Brown, yeah, she was,
Yeah,
I also met, Billy.
yeah, Billy, yeah.
Billy was there, so.
His public narrative is moving.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, so, yes. There are, we can tap, as part of our public, engagement piece, yeah, we need to engage groups like that.
And that's part of the, you know, hyper localized knowledge and brain trust that each one of the task force members brings to that segment of it, because, you know, y'all know where you live more better than anybody else will. And that can really help to make those connections, and that plan, whatever we decide it ends up looking like. And a lot of experience. So it's fun to put these things together, actually.
I do want to ask, so I just want us to be mindful of like, you know, collecting these stories, just because we are working like for the city and stuff, like how is it that, not so much compensate, but like, I also don't want to like take away and just kind of exploit these stories whenever they don't get anything, because NAC does work a lot and they haven't really seen much. And they continue to do the work because they believe in like not wanting to like dive in floods and like constantly having to go through that. But yeah, I think I just want to be mindful and like creating that community
Expectations.
right, and also be online presence, because like we can show pictures and stuff like, hey, look at us, you know, taking pictures of like the community members, but like what are we doing for them? Yeah.
Yeah, and this is also, I mean, as our piece of public engagement also can be another platform for them as well, which they probably don't know exists. And so, you know, as part of our public engagement piece, you know, that's part of what we're also trying to do, I would expect, is to let people in these groups and in these communities understand, you know, what the task force does and how we're trying to represent their point of view.
Right. And that's probably where we can open up the committees and tell everybody
Yeah.
we're open for the public.
Yeah, and I think, like things like, if groups like NAC and others have had trouble getting their hands on data or getting an accurate response, or want a representative to come speak to their meeting, like all those kinds of requests can come through the task force, and we can use our own, like our power
Yeah.
to help them advance those kinds of requests. And I think that like all of that I can see on promo, like why this task force and how can we be helpful to you? Like that should be sort of like a little list of things that we can do and how to get involved, come to a committee meeting, et cetera, et cetera. And are y'all able to provide as part of your contract, like stipends, like when we do the tours, like I envision that with community storytellers on the ground, like coming with us or us getting off the bus and hearing from them or whatever the case may be. Are y'all able to provide stipends to those folks for their time?
So that is a Leslie question. I know, and this is
I
still
can
more
look into that too.
a Leslie question, but I know that there's been discussion around using MapNext, which is a project that I don't work on, but I know that Holloway works on.
Yeah. This is a Leslie
Using
question.
micro grants through MapNext, which is doing very similar work as it pertains to like flood insurance and the firms. But I feel like there's a way to bring in subcontractors. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
We gotta do.
I
some
think we
more
need to
research
get
on that.
creative. Yeah, we need to get creative with it and just see what contractually what we're allowed to do. And if there's something that we know about or hear about that maybe is outside of purview, maybe we can connect and align some of those. But under this particular contract, I'll have to go back and look at it. I don't know that there's anything such as that specified unless it's in a subcontract form. So yeah, there's some legalese and contract stuff I gotta look into, but I can see.
And then two other things I wanted to say is one of the things in the bylaws, and it came to mind, is we have to provide a space for public comment. So that will need to go on the agenda, but also that's a really good opportunity to engage people who want to say things like, this is how the task force can help us.
Right.
And that way it's on record, and then that kind of helps steer, the direction that it goes. And then in this next task force meeting, anybody will be able to log into the Zoom and they can pick between Spanish, English, and Vietnamese in real time.
Cool.
And the whole thing will be translated.
And are you going to be able to track who they are?
Yes, because they'll log into Zoom and put like their email address. So this will create a good like email list, which goes to online presence / public noticing.
Yes, all of the slashes.
So we have like a distribution list where it goes basically just to county people and task force people. How can we notice the public more about these meetings? Especially given that they can attend and give comments and listen to a language that they are more comfortable with. Is this like a task force question, like, hey, send us your contacts that you would like for us to email and notify? Because the previous meeting, we sent out like I don't want to say that we sent out an e-blast, but it was like here is a template of an e-blast that you can share with your contacts that we sent to this distribution list that we have. And we translated into Spanish and Vietnamese. But if it's only going to county people, I doubt that, that they're forwarding it to organizers and people on the ground and people who speak Spanish and Vietnamese.
Well, I think whoever you're sending it out to, you can keep doing that. But if you send it to us and then have us redistribute it, that's one way of doing it, because we can plug into people like Super Neighborhood Alliance, which is a wide coverage type organization. Then we can also plug into various nonprofits that we know working, in these neighborhoods as well. We can also plug into schools in our area, because they can post this kind of information on their websites for, parents to also be able to take a look at. So there's a number of, there's a number of ways that I think we can, reverberate that message.
Yeah, I think kind of directing it towards organizations would be helpful, and just that way we don't get an overload of like, just bombarding messages to people. And if it's to organizations, they probably will bring it up in their meeting and like ask people if they want to do it and kind of direct them, or they need to be directed rather than, I like that. And I know a lot of like grassroots orgs that do things around like environmental disasters and flood, so I could also pass that around.
Yeah, I think if you make a flyer and if you make anything that's like super shareable on social media, that makes it really easy for the orgs and just like repost or reshare. So it's like a little kit or something where it's like, here's everything you need to help us promote this meeting, with a lot of graphics, not a lot of words, and in those 3 different languages that are provided at the meeting. And then a lot of the groups that we're a part of or that we help support, talk through like WhatsApp or that kind of messaging service. So anything that you can share, like that literally people can copy and paste into like a WhatsApp chat or text to each other. That's a really good way to kind of reach people who are not on Facebook or not on Instagram and not on the socials in other ways. And a lot of our members also have, our coalition members have like newsletters and stuff. So anything like that, if I can just send them like, here's the little library of stuff, they can easily disseminate it. And then we find with especially a lot of our older folks in Northeast that it's really a barrier to have the like registration on Zoom. Like our organizers have to just walk people through like every single step of it. What we've done to kind of circumvent that is have like a community link. So we'll register and like say like first name, community, last name, member, and then we just send them that active link.
They just click on
So
it.
then all they have to do is like click on that link. They don't have to like register. It means you don't get their data, but
They're still plugged into
but
you.
they're still there. And then you can always, once they're there, like if there is a space to help rename people on Zoom, like some of them will join early, then we can do that so you know who they are. But that has been a huge barrier for us in this like virtual world of organizing.
I think just from, so there's noticing, but then I think to your point, Yasmin, we need to think about also like, how big do we go? And then what kind of like reaction are we going to get? And how do we respond to that? Which means I'm thinking of things that we still need to work on. Like, okay, just basic things like, what is the task force? What are our talking points? What are we doing? Those types of questions that we're going to get. So we just throw ourselves out there and we're not prepared with our key messages, then we're not going to be able to respond in a unified and consistent manner. And also with purpose, because I also don't want to set us up, we're always going to have people that are going to be detractors. And we can't focus, we can't put a lot of our energy on those people, but we're always going to have them. And so we also need to come up with a way to redirect to the positive message and redirect to the purpose of what we're doing. And so I think those are just things we need to think through, because we're going to still have to do public noticing no matter what. But maybe we make this more of like a gradual building thing, and so that way we can kind of all get our collective like public facing house in order. So that way we're all very prepared to get those questions. And that also y'all are, as task force members out in the communities, that way, I mean, you know personally what you can say, but if you get approached by somebody at church or wherever supermarket or wherever, then kind of like collectively what we're saying. And it's just to give you the tools, I mean, give the whole task force the tools that we need to.
I mean, once our work plan is adopted, we
Yep.
need like an infographic that's like, in the first year, here are the things we're gonna get. And then the one we were just talking about like, how can the task force help you, like an infographic about that, and how do you, what are the entry points, how do you get them in? Follow our meetings, join a committee, whatever the entry.
My
points are.
apologies if that was discussed at work. I'm still catching up from my own vacation. So I was not here last week.
No, but I think like we could, you know, start like launching those things late July, early August, like once this is all adopted.
Yeah. And just, I mean, you start very the simple, start at the elevator speech, you know, and then move to more detailed stuff like ours just talking about. You know, for people that are really interested, how can you get plugged in? These are committees. You know, if you want to be involved, who, contact number, website or whatever, email address, or, you know, if you got more questions. Yeah, so all of that.
So then with that, we want to notice the people of the next meeting. I think that regardless of like key messaging or anything, like we just people need to know about this meeting
Correct.
so that we can get the ball rolling with that.
We post it on the website.
It is posted on the website, but I think like going back to that
Yeah.
e-blast, like we want people involved as much as possible. One of the specific deliverables from Holloway is like a social media plan and social media platforms. It has to technically, rolling out the social media has to be approved. And I don't know if that's something that can be approved by y'all or it should be approved by the task force. And just as an aside, digital marketing is like my specialty area. So I'm like real excited about this. I've been like waiting to talk about this since March.
Backstory, that's how we know each other.
That's how I ended up at Holloway. And so does it make sense to do like at the next exec meeting, we present like a social media plan and rock and roll with like a Facebook, Instagram? Do we want a Twitter? I don't know, what platforms would you like to be on? Would you like for us to be on? Right now, all of this is being live streamed from the Holloway YouTube. Does that mean the task force needs their own channel? And I think actually, that actually makes sense so that all of the meetings are in one easy place.
And it's yours.
And then who needs, like, I've had like all of these questions, all these things. So with that, can I propose this at the next meeting to be voted on and vetted by y'all? And then does it need to go to the task force, or do y'all feel good rocking and rolling with approving it? Can y'all even approve it?
This is like not my area of expertise. I'm very excited that you're excited.
I'm so excited. My excitement can be overwhelming, I'm sorry.
No. Well, I wonder if we should, like, if there a little teaser we can show people at the July meeting, the full task force meeting. And then I'm good with you, like, pitching what you're thinking about to us the next time we gather. I
We need to get our
honestly
branding.
to all of it, so.
Brandy.
Awesome. I think Greg is already on that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, do we need to vote on that or?
We will vote on that at the next task force meeting. Just like get it approved for us to do it. And here's a high level overview of what we're going to do. And then y'all can vet the messaging that actually goes on social media. Is this meeting going to be only 2 hours? These are all the agenda items on the side of my paper that I wrote down. I can review them really quickly. We've got public comment. We have approved the work plan, approved new committees, equity training, committee reports, exec decision-making, IRT timeline updates, WWK presentation. I don't remember what WWK is. I'll come back to that. Storytelling. I love that storytelling corner. With a connection to a deliverable, update on social media, WWK presentation.
Worldwide.
That's why I can't write in abbreviations, but those are the items that I have so far.
Can I, throw a little wrench in that? So I'm just thinking ahead of like how to connect the work with the IRT and what sort of
I think that's sort of the lens that I try to bring is like making sure that it's connected with the IRT, because that is not the totality of what the task force will do, but it's a big part of it. And right now, under the current deliverables, there's been a couple of things that should have come to the task force that haven't yet. If the timeline gets extended, then great, we'll have like more time to do it. But if it doesn't, then I'm thinking of a scenario in which we have a meeting in July, the next one isn't until September, and they're midway through the phase and we haven't reviewed any of the deliverables. Which I don't think would be where we want to be,
No.
given that there's a lot of really great ideas in this group that need to find their way to connect with the IRT. So ideally, we would, and we actually are supposed to ask for items that the task force is supposed to ask for items they want from the IRT, like about a month, get like a month lead time. So we're like right now at the time where we should be like, if there's anything you want from the IRT at the July meeting, then like, right now is the time to ask for it. So I have a couple like of suggestions of what it could be, an update on the timeline is great, but also like technically they should have some deliverables to present to you all. One of those is that they have to develop reporting formats on their updates that have to be approved by you. They have to be advised by you and approved by Commissioners Court. So we should probably request to get something in writing from them about what is this reporting format. Then the second deliverable in their phase 2 is, as they're preparing this preliminary flood resilience plan, they have to put together some data. So it would just be asking and requesting sort of like, what is your table of contents look like for that preliminary flood report that you're planning to have in the next couple of months? And what are the lists of data that you guys have already or are looking to get? And that would, the data I think very directly ties with the work the Equity Analysis Committee is doing. So to align that piece. And then the table of contents would align with this like overall strategy report committee, that's like looking to make sure that the way that the IRT is thinking about equitable flood resilience is how the task force is thinking about it. So that could be like the request, it could be a request to get that presented or just a request for the documents. Either way, I think it makes sense to request it. If the timeline gets extended, great, we're already starting on it, no big deal. If the timeline is not extended, then great, we gotta get this like reviewed by you all. Otherwise, IRT will keep moving forward. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. So if we are gonna, the last week of July, meet and then create this committee, then I think we should ask for all the documents that you just said, and then the place to like actually work on them and talk through all that.
Great. So just request documents. Okay. And I have this written up already, so after I get to the office, I can just CC you guys and you can finalize what the actual request will say.
Yeah, so we can be really specific in our ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, very specific in the ask.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you, Vanessa, because we kind of, I don't want to say we lost sight of the alignment, but we sort of got to talking about our own, about the task force own internal structures and governance which is important.
Number 9, I think we're ready to be at number 9. Work plan and training curriculum. Would it be possible to receive would it be possible to receive y'all's feedback or like, I don't know, it's been a long meeting, I'm like last night about it. So everyone should have 2 documents. One is, this is all of the information compiled from all the different people about the work plan. And then the training curriculum plan is a separate deliverable from Holloway that feeds into the work plan. And so basically, I guess, so my request of y'all is to review first the work plan feedback, and it can just be highlights, or you can write to the side, what are the things that y'all think need to be prioritized and implemented into the work plan as far as changes and suggestions. And then you would submit those back to Holloway. Would Tuesday be unrealistic next week?
Because we have to reissue it to the full task force by the 8th.
Yeah, and
This
technically we
Thursday.
could do it on the 9th because not the shutdown, but the
No
no fly zone is the 10th, right?
Okay.
Oh, wait,
Oh, wait, I thought it was the 9th.
Like, we can do work on the 9th.
yeah, I guess technically the invoice will say the 9th, so you can do it on it. Yeah.
So through the end of next week, that's the
Yeah.
Friday, okay.
I'm so sorry. You want us to look at this feedback and then make changes?
No. I just want you to look through this feedback and this is a great suggestion. Let's incorporate it. This is not related, or let's table it for another time, and then we incorporate it.
Is this in the Google Doc where I can just put like comments?
I'm gonna, I will share that with you after this meeting.
And what does Power BI mean?
Power BI is the platform that the IRT is using for the infrastructure resilience actions dashboard. It is an incredibly I don't want to say overcomplicated. It's very academic. And because they use it, I think it's important that everyone knows how to use it.
Or at least a very
I put that on the
basic.
training document of a how-to video on what is Power BI and how do you use it.
What is BI?
I'm not exact, it's really like an analytics tool, and you can slice and dice data in all kinds of interesting and graphical ways. But it's,
Business intelligence.
yeah, it's a data crunching, but yeah, it's like Excel on steroids, but like better, and it's not super easy to use either.
I don't think it's Excel. It's just a data visualization and it has a bunch of filters. But if you don't understand how the filters
Right,
work, or
that's
what the
right,
data set
yeah.
is, or like what the different, if you don't have like a basic understanding of statistics almost,
Mhm,
this platform is hard to use.
yeah.
But that's an internal tool, that's not outward facing. And they've talked about it, I thought about it. All right, let's not talk about
Yeah.
it anymore.
It's Microsoft, right? Yeah, it's,
Internal to where the task force all has access to it,
yeah,
Who uses it now?
the
the
IoT.
IoT.
The RT.
That's their dashboard.
Mhm. So like when you see that dashboard, that is Power BI kind of working its
Oh.
thing. But in order for you as a user to go in and kind of slice and dice and start looking at certain things that you want to drill down on, you need a little
Yeah.
training. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
not
you-
intuitive.
You want our input on this by
Yeah.
Tuesday?
Mhm.
That's fine for me.
And some of this stuff we've already talked about in this meeting, and a lot of it is, sure, all the sticky notes that everybody put on Tuesday, last week, and now they're all in one document.
And just, oh, sorry, as a FYI, the IRT will be submitting next week, like a joint letter on their, like, the feedback to the work plan. They asked to have a voice in it, so what I said would be a possible step to do that is to submit a succinct one-page, like, with their, if it's a concern, like, to put the concern in the recommendation that they would want out of that. So we should be getting that next week from them. And they had some concerns, there were some things that were outside of the scope of the bylaw as well. So I also asked them to send a one pager to say, to outline those items that they think. And to note on both of these, whether it's consensus by the IRT, all 6 members, or the IRT lead only, or both.
Okay. Is there anywhere where it says that they have to provide input, like where? On
No.
what we're doing?
No, and I think it's one of those things where we can get it, you guys can review it and choose whether or not, like, you think it applies to you, And I would hope that they would focus on the things where they need your help on, right? Where it's like, oh, we need your help on this, rather than kind of like oversight over your things.
Okay. And when are we getting that?
Next week, I asked for it for this week, but they need more time, they said that they need till next week.
And then the supporting document, this is very, very rough draft because most of these dates need to be approved. We didn't want to like line and be up. But these would be based on the feedback that we received from the work plan, just ideas for ongoing training for the task force. And so really it would start with July because June and April have passed. And so I've been, and we don't have to go into detail now, but I've identified ways for us to do like self-paced modules where people could do this learning on their own time and optional in-person trainings. I really want to do something for Harvey. I think like that's something that resonates with everyone. Maybe this isn't, the conversation that needs to happen in Harvey. And then identifying experts to talk about these things. I think one thing that I want to be conscious of is that sometimes it can be easy. A blind spot for me is it can be easy to default to academic experts, and they're not always the most important voice in the room. And then making sure that the people who are leading panels are representative of communities. They're not all white, they're not all men, they're not all cisgendered, like just trying to be a little bit more inclusive in the voices who are leading the learning. And so I would love to, just have y'all's information on this person would be this is a better suggestion for the person who should be leading this meeting.
Yeah, if there's a topic that you feel is missing as well, feel free to add it. This is just like Mariah said, this is just the beginning.
We didn't want to like go ham on this document and then it needs to be completely reworked. So
Yeah,
open to your
it's the
feedback.
start. It's the
I
start.
love it. And this will also be Google Docs.
Pardon?
This will also be a Google Docs we can comment on.
I can make that happen.
Yep.
And going back to the IRT, I know there was supposed to be a meeting yesterday that got canceled. Do we want to talk about like our coverage, or I know y'all have been trying to collapse meetings.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about all of that for a second?
Yeah, so the idea, I think we were having sort of like, I was having check-ins with Dr. Lorente and Paula was having separate check-ins, and then we would somehow like get together at the meetings, and things just felt like a broken telephone a lot of the time. So I think what would work better is if we figure out like bi-weekly or however often these check-ins need to be, where we have the exec committee or representative, myself and folks from Holloway, and then the IRT come together and do these check-ins and try to figure out, I think, like big scope type of things, sort of like items that are going on in the IRT that we need task force input on and collaboration on, and making sure that that gets assigned either to the appropriate committee or the appropriate task force meeting, that kind of alignment. And so I haven't heard yet back from IRT. Last they said was it wouldn't just be Dr. Lorente, it would be all 6 of the IRT members, which I think would be good. And that's sort of where we're at. Hearing back from them. Do you guys feel like that would work for you all as like a time commitment to also be at that meeting?
Or do you want to send a representative of the exec committee?
You said, I knew that figure.
Kim was waiting.
Bi-weekly or monthly?
I said bi-weekly, I think because right now it feels like necessary to connect, like it could go to monthly once we kind of get our group started and we figure it out, but right now we're still sort of, figuring out what it looks like to work together, so. And it could be the thing where maybe it's not the exec committee, maybe we do turn this to the overall approach committee once it gets voted on, right? And then that could be the more nitty gritty, the folks who get into the more nitty gritty of the IRT work, open to that as well. I just don't want to have these like separate meetings where things are being done that don't get communicated out with everyone.
Yeah, well, since I'm assigned to that, not yet the creative committee anyway, so I'm happy to. Since my chair doesn't point his finger directly at me, I'm happy to represent us there. So.
Also, has it been, oh, go ahead, Kim, sorry.
I mean, we can,
Yeah, we can all.
Oh, I like this one.
Okay. Has there been any other discussion about IRT members serving on our committees?
So that was the conversation that was supposed to happen yesterday.
Okay.
I did receive, I forwarded it to Dr. Lorente. I didn't forward it to y'all, but I did receive an email from Matt Z requesting, specific people from the IRT sit on the equity and metrics one, which was in line with the request that came from the equity and metrics committee. So Craig will sit on that. And then and he also suggested Carly, who's the engineering representative, as well as somebody from the city of Houston, which is kind of in limbo since Marissa, I think today's her last day or tomorrow's her last day. Yes. But with that, we were supposed to discuss it yesterday and it got pushed. So I can follow up.
Yeah.
Just get her.
Yeah, 'cause I just think that's really important for that relation, like that, just continuous working relationship at every level of both organizations, that they'd be on our committees.
I agree. I mean, I think that would come up naturally in the
Yeah.
committees, you know, like, we can only get so far, each group can only get so far with the other. It's not fair.
Guys, I'm sorry, I have at 11, but I gotta hop on. Is it good?
Yep.
You guys need anything else?
So we got another
Do you-
meeting
do you need
today.
to-
Y'all need anything else from me?
No, and do you need to take it here? You're more than welcome.
Oh, I think it's okay. I don't have to be like super present, so I can.
I have something tangible to give you, so I'm gonna step out,
Okay.
I stepped out.
Okay.
BRB. I did, actually, I think we're.
Sure.
Yeah,
Are we
one
on
thing
the
to talk about.
selection committee this evening?
Yeah, but I'm not gonna
Okay,
be
so do we
there.
need to,
I cannot be there today. I wanted to just download stuff onto someone.
You can download it on me.
Okay.
Let me give Vanessa this one,
Okay,
and I'll
cool.
BRB.
okay, so are we adjourned?
What time?
Yes.
11.
11, okay, shoot.
Okay.
We also need to schedule it.
Who's the interim?
Oh, we need to
flood
schedule
control
next meeting?
director?
We don't know. Or is it? Alan? Alan, okay.
Who's in?
Like,
The new Russ.
Can I help on
intern
the call?
Um,
Can I help on the call?
Sure. So wait, so when is our next meeting for exec committee gonna be? That's, I think, our last thing we gotta do, and then we can adjourn. When you get back from vacation?
I'll be back the 26th. But that'll be too late.
That's a
for-
month. Yeah,
I mean, I'm around next week.
we can meet next week. I mean, Mariah and Vanessa are out, but we'll be here. Mhm.
We can do it by phone.
We could do that too. Is next week reasonable?
Next week for us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, sure.
This time still works. Perfect.
Wednesday.
Yeah. On my calendar, yes, it is Wednesday. So it'd be the 7th.
I'd have to do like a 10 or 10:30.
Okay.
When can you?
Oh, I'm just seeing if next Wednesday, the 7th is doable.
Oh,
Like 10:15 or 10:30.
Yeah, well, we can work around. Yeah, whatever you need. Want to do 10:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to bring it up. So, come next month, I'll be working at the school.
Okay.
So I don't think I'll have the time to even hop on the Zoom call, but I'm not sure about my schedule.
Okay. Do
In the
we,
morning.
well, should we,
What are you talking about?
at the next meeting? So we're thinking next week at 10:30 this time.
I can do evening too.
We
I
can,
mean, in August, whenever I start.
oh, in August. Okay, so
Yeah.
July, you're fine.
Yeah, July is
Okay.
fine, yeah.
But I'm open.
Yeah, we could, do lunches or weekend or evenings. I mean, we'll be flexible.
Okay, wait, so there is a meeting next week? Or there's not a meeting next week?
Yes, we can. Yes, next Wednesday,
Okay. Can you coordinate that calendar?
10:30.
I will not be there, and neither will Vanessa, but yeah, it'll be fine.
But we'll get all your input and the train keeps rolling down the state.
Do we need to schedule it for 2 hours instead of 1 hour?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
you mean
do-
this was a 1 hour?
We always.
We
schedule
always.
1 hour. We love boundaries. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end Tom. I don't know if Tom is on there. I'm not gonna end Tom. I want to end the live stream. Tom, make that happen
We're adjourned.
at 11:04. Will you click end?
Yes.
Maybe that way.